Yesterday, Senator Bernie Sanders took to the floor of the Senate, urging his colleagues to pass a resolution asking for accountability that would require the Biden administration to report on possible, quote, violations of internationally recognized human rights by the government of Israel, and to certify that, quote, no unit of the Israeli security forces receiving U.S. assistance has committed any gross violations of human rights. Only 11 senators of the 100 supported moving the resolution to even be considered for a vote. The vast majority voted to just table it without even bringing it to a vote. Joining me now is Senator Bernie Sanders, independent Vermont. He chairs the Health, Education, and Labor Committee. It's good to have you, Senator. First, so some context here. My understanding is that it is already the case under U.S. law, and this is due to things that happened during the Cold War, in which was found the U.S. was supplying arms to various governments that were using those arms then for human rights abuses, that it's already a part of U.S. law that the State Department has to certify when they give weapons to anyone, doesn't matter who it is, that those weapons are not being used to violate international humanitarian law.
That's right. Chris, this is a long-standing law that says something that's very sensible. If the taxpayers of this country are providing military equipment to any nation on earth, we have to make sure that that country is using it consistent with international law and human rights. This is long-standing. That's correct.
And so explain to me what the vote was on yesterday in that context.
What the vote was on yesterday was to have the State Department do a study on whether or not Israel was violating international law and human rights. And given the fact that many of the weapons that Israel has used in the last 100 days come from the United States of America, we certainly have a right to know that. My view from day one, Chris, has been that Israel has the right to respond to Hamas's barbaric attack on October 7th, but they do not have the right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people, which is what we are seeing right now. And as you've just mentioned, the humanitarian situation in Gaza now is unbelievably bad, and we're looking at the possibility of hundreds of thousands of children starving. We cannot allow that to happen.
You know, we've had reporting throughout here, and I think it's quite established that the Biden administration, through Secretary Blinken, through Jake Sullivan, even in person-to-person calls between the president and Benjamin Netanyahu, have been urging a timeline, a vision for a post-conflict form of reconstruction, to ratchet down the intensity and scale of bombardment. As of yet, that doesn't seem like it's happening. I just wonder, like, as a U.S. Senator, does anyone have any sense of a timeline here? Is this when this phase of this war might end?
I think there is a huge frustration when we see President Biden appropriately saying that he is concerned about indiscriminate bombing and the humanitarian disaster, urging Netanyahu and his right-wing government to do the right thing. And Netanyahu basically says, hey, screw you. We will do exactly what we want to do and when we want to do it. So the bombing right now, what we are looking at, I want people to appreciate this. 70% of the housing units in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. You got 1.9 million people who have been displaced from their homes. They need food, they need water, they need medical supplies. As I mentioned a moment ago, children are now on the verge of starvation. This is not what the people of America want when they provide billions of dollars to Israel. And it's high time that we told Netanyahu that he's not getting another nickel unless he radically changes his attitude towards the Palestinian people and the nature of his military campaign.
Two of your colleagues, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Senator Van Hollen and Senator Merkley, both went to Rafah. Right. That, of course, is the border town between Gaza and Egypt proper. And Jeff Merkley wrote this. I just want to read it to you and get your reaction, because there's a bunch of issues in getting that humanitarian aid in. Senator Merkley writing that trucks filled with food, water, and medical supplies are lined up waiting to be granted entry into Gaza, even if all the items on a truck have been pre-approved by Israel to ensure they are not, quote, dual-use items that have a potential military purpose. Israeli authorities can and do still reject some items as an inspection site, and then this is interesting, and if a single item is rejected, the entire truckload is rejected. How concerned are people, you and your colleagues, about the specter of mass starvation, which is what the World Food Program is warning about?
To me, it's unbelievable. I mean, how do you say concerned? I would hope that we're more than concerned. We are sitting here supplying the Netanyahu government with the arms they need and in the process of starving hundreds of thousands of children. Concern is too modest a word. We have got to act, and we've got to act now. What Merkley was talking about is not only is the bombing making it impossible for trucks. You know, if you're a truck driver trying to deliver your goods, you're not going to do it when you're getting bombed. But in addition to that, what Israel has done at the border has made it extremely difficult for these trucks to get through. And bottom line here is we cannot turn our backs on the enormity of the suffering that is now taking place in Gaza. We have got to act.
You are a Jewish American. You have family that was killed by Hitler. You've talked about that. You're the closest, I think, any American Jewish candidate has ever come to the presidency, or at least a nomination. And you were in Israel in a kibbutz in your youth. This has been just a wrenching time, I think, for international and American Jews. What do you feel and think as a Jew watching all this play out in these last 100 days?
Well, you know, Chris, what I would hope that no matter what my religious background is, I would respond accordingly. You know, if this was taking place in Italy or in Ireland, I would feel the same way. But I have to tell you, having spent months in Israel as a kid, knowing the history of anti-Semitism and the Holocaust, for me to see a right-wing Israeli government create this kind of misery in Gaza is extraordinarily upsetting. No question about that.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.